I'm going to show you how to bisect a segment. So we'll start out the same way as we did when we were copying a segment, which is to draw a line segment. So any line segment you want, just make sure it fits on your paper. And it can be angled whatever you want. Don't measure it. Okay, so there's my line segment. So we're going to label that line segment F and G. And so now we're going to bisect it. So to bisect it, it's a little different than when we did the copying, because we're not going to actually do from point to endpoint to endpoint. All you need to do is put the point of your compass on one of the endpoints, and then the width or the length of your compass has to be at least halfway the distance between G and F. So you can just tell. So don't do it too close. Like if you were right here, I would say, you need to go a little bigger. You need to ensure that it is more than halfway past. And so what you do is you just do a little arc above and a little arc below. All right? Then you do the same thing over here. Arc above and a little arc below. All right, so then what that does is it creates two intersections of arcs. And so those 2 points where those arcs intersect lie on a line that bisects the segment we just drew. So it's called a segment bisector. So we talked about segment bisectors before. So you're going to draw that line and that bisected segment FG. So since that's bisected, then that is point M, which we'll call the midpoint. And sometimes it's called other things. It doesn't always have to be called M, but we'll call it M for midpoint. So that's how you bisect a segment. So that tells us, let's go ahead and mark it. I'm going to mark it with 2 tick marks each. So we know that FM and MG are the same length. So we can say FM is equal to MG. We can say M is the midpoint of line segment FG. And we can say that, let's call this line JK. We can say that line JK, we could also say ray MJ or ray KJ, any of the pieces that are this full line that include M is a segment bisector for F. Line segment FG. So it bisects it. So you can say line JK bisects line segment FG. And again, because we know that these two are equal, that means that they're also congruent segments. So we just created 2 congruent segments. Line segment FM is congruent to line segment MG. So actually, when we drew this too, we'll talk about this later and have to do this a lot. I went ahead and drew the line, but we didn't need to. We could have just marked the midpoint. But what we did is we actually created what's called a perpendicular bisector. So not only does this line that we drew bisect that segment, it bisects it and cuts it at a right angle. So this is actually a right angle here. So this is really a perpendicular bisector. So a perpendicular bisector is a line that cuts a segment in half at a 90-degree angle. But we'll talk about more of that later. But all you really need to do is mark that. So you could have just lined it up like this and then just marked that, labeled it, and then I do want you to put the labeling on here, the markings, to show that it was bisected by putting that those 2 pieces would be equivalent in measure. And that's how you bisect a segment.